Today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast, my guest is George Gilbert. George is an experienced speaker, humorist, and storyteller. As co-owner of Next Stage Communications, George and his partner work with entrepreneurs, business executive, and aspiring professional speakers to improve their speaking skills and further their businesses with the use of stories. George also speaks about the importance of using humor to get through tough time and promotes organ and tissue donation as his wife Dory is still faithfully by his side thanks to a successful kidney and pancreas transplant. George is here to share the story of his first experience as a professional stand-up comic at the ripe old age of 12. George, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Anne. I'm so excited to be here today.
All right. Well, okay, 12 years old, first professional gig as a comic. How does that happen? How did you even get introduced to comedy and wanting to do that as a professional?
Great question, Anne. Well, I have to go back a few more years before the age of 12. I've been around stand-up comedy literally since before I was born. And I say that because my parents were a comedy team. Mom started out at the age of 5, a child prodigy in vaudeville. And dad started out when he was around 18 or 20. Dad was 10 years older. So they
He's a late
near the
bloomer.
same time, near the same time. And so they eventually teamed up to do a comedy variety act. And they went all over the country, all over the world. In fact, my parents produced a USO show and won the GI Award for Best USO show during World War II in the Pacific. So I'm very proud
Wow.
of my family and what they've done because my dad signed up right after Pearl Harbor was attacked, and they wouldn't take him because he had what they call valley fever. And so he had a spot on his lung. Although dad, if you ever saw their act, you would know that he was stronger and in better shape than most of the GIs getting drafted and joining the World War II. But that's okay. He was able to do his part and help our country. So anyway, they teamed up and they appeared all over the world. They appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show several times, other television shows, and even played themselves as they were featured in the movie, the musical, The Daughter of Rosie O'Grady. So when you're featured as yourself, playing yourself, that is quite an honor and respect to an act. So uh, if you ever get to watch on Turner Classic Movies, usually on St. Patrick's Day, that movie plays because it's kind of got an Irish accent vaudeville feel to it. So anyway, so they've been performing all my life. Now, I was shy. My parents could get on stage and perform in front of hundreds, thousands, and on television, millions of people. But I was the shy kid. In fact, when my parents had parties, I would hide behind this little nook when all the people would come. And I'll tell you what, there were a lot of famous people coming over because in Las Vegas, where I grew up, they had all the entertainers over for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all the holidays. So one time, you probably don't remember this show, but the entire touring cast of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In came over for a party. And mom had to drag me out. And then Buddy Hackett, a famous comedian, crashed a party and got drunk, and others had to take him home. But I thought he was great because I just saw him starring in The Love Bug, a Disney movie. And so next thing I know, here's this guy at our party, so it was great. I had this great childhood, but I was shy. I was the kid who sat in the back of the room and didn't want to be called on. Well, at the age of 11, I'm here going to Kit Carson Elementary School. And Mrs. Gaston was our music teacher. And we had to take music just like we had to take math, English, history, science, PE. I was only there because I had to take that class. And again, like I said, I sat in the back. And when everybody stood up to sing in class, I was mouthing it. I don't know if you remember Milli Vanilli, but I was the original Milli Vanilli, right? So one day, Mrs. Gaston announces to the class that everybody in the class had to perform in an in-class talent show as part of their grade. And she said, I don't care what you do. I just want you to come up here and show some kind of talent. Well, I couldn't sing. I couldn't play an instrument at that time. Still really can't. I didn't dance. I didn't know what to do. And I was getting so nervous just at the thought of having to get up there. When the sign-up sheet came closer and closer, I started to shake, broke out into a cold sweat, or what entertainers call flop sweat. I had flop sweat before I was even on stage. And flop sweat is that feeling you get when you're on stage and you're singing your best song, doing your best dance, telling your best jokes, and the audience just sits there. And no response, no applause, no laughs. And you break out into this cold, nervous sweat, and you just want to get off the stage and never get back up there again. But the pros do. Well, anyway, I started to shake, and when the paper, the sign-up sheet was put right in front of me, I didn't know what to do. I panicked. So I wrote down stand-up comedian. Well, actually, that's not even true. I only wrote down comic because 11 dyslexic, I didn't know how to spell stand-up comedian. And I didn't want to get points taken off for misspelling. So later that day, I came home from school and my parents are asking me, what's the matter, George? Is someone bullying you or something wrong? No. Well, what's the matter? I'm in a talent show. And I don't remember if it was mom, dad, or both of them, but I know someone said, that's great, Georgie, but you have no talent.
Jeez.
And I said,
So obviously they never pressured you. They never pushed you towards that. They were letting you be who you needed to be. You were a shy kid and they weren't putting pressure on you.
Absolutely. They were the most supportive parents one could have. And they were so wonderful. And there was laughter and around the house, but no one ever forced me to go into the show business. And even when I started, mom and dad, especially mom, wasn't one of those what they call stage mothers. She was not going to be one of those stage mothers backstage yelling at everybody to make sure I got on stage and everything was right for me. No, she let it happen organically, if you will. And so, and I said, I know. I as they said, you have no talent. I said, I know. That's why I put down stand-up comedian. Well, right away, they both got this gleam in their eye and said, Georgie's following. He's going to do comedy. He's going to be part of show business. No, I just wanted to get a grade. So they helped me put an act together, and they wrote some of the jokes. They borrowed from some of their friends, because my parents not only did a physical comedy act, but they would write jokes for some of the other comedians. So they had no problem stealing from them. And I was just an 11-year-old that no one's going to worry. But they changed the jokes. So they changed the jokes so that they fit an 11-year-old.
Yeah, to be relevant, to be appropriate.
Exactly. So, and so there was a joke by Henny Youngman, and his famous tagline was, "Take my wife, please." Right? And every time he got up there, he'd say it 2 or 3 times, and everybody would laugh. Well, they took that, but obviously that does not apply to an 11-year-old. So they switched it around to "Take my mom, please," and gave me some little jokes. And so I learned them. And on the bus there, I was practicing them the day that it was time to perform. And so Mrs. Gaston introduced me, and I did my little routine. Again, I was shaking, but the kids kind of laughed a little bit. More importantly, Mrs. Gaston was laughing so hard, practically fell off her seat. And so I did it. I sat down. When the class was over, I started to get up. Mrs. Gaston called me back and said, "Georgie, come here."
Hang on a second. But how did you feel as you're delivering this?
Oh, I was so nervous.
Set.
I was nervous. I know it showed, as I got on, the nervousness is still there once in a while, but it's on the inside. They can't tell. And that's very important for a comedian, because if you're doing a comedy club or even just a show somewhere, the audience can smell that nervousness,
Right.
like an animal smells fear, you know? And
So you stayed nervous through. It's not like you did this first set and you found your calling. You got in that groove, you got in that mindset, and you realize, whoa, I have an
no,
act for this. This is for me. No, you're nervous the entire time. You go back to your chair. You're just happy it's done, and you hope you never have to do it again.
yeah, it's one of those things. So, oh, you know, you just kind of do that. Well, I'm walking out of class and Mrs. Gaston calls me back and she said, Georgie, that was so funny. I want you to do it for the next class. Oh boy. And I thought about it, and you don't want to say no. But then I realized my next class was math. And being a dyslexic, I hated math. So I got out of math. So that was okay. So I did it again. And I come home and my parents are waiting at the door. And they said, how'd you do? And I said, I was held over. You see, that's a great term in show business. When you're held over, that means you killed that audience. And so they were so proud of me, gave me a big hug, thought it was over with. And then Mrs. Gaston called my mom
Oh,
and she
Mrs.
said,
Gaston seems to be a main character in this story.
in this part of the story, absolutely. And she called my mom and she said, hey, I would love for Georgie to do his comedy routine at the parent teacher meeting, association meeting. So I did. And mom and dad were there, which is probably the first and only time they were ever at a PTA meeting. And so I did it. I got some good laughs, but mom and dad came over and said, Georgie, you're stepping on your laughs. You need to pause so you build the laughter. You see, when you step on your laughs, that means the audience doesn't get a chance to fully laugh and they don't hear the setup line to the next joke. So you're training them not to laugh. So if you wait for your laughs, even when you're not quite getting laughs, it sets the tone. You're teaching the audience to laugh. So I said, okay, whatever. And I said, next time you ought to get up. And they made me practice with a yo-yo, although I never planned on getting up again in front of an audience. It's just so nerve-wracking. Well, they made me practice this, and I think Dad had planned this out, but they didn't tell me. We're driving down. Now I'm 12 years old, just a few months later. They're driving down I-15 to go to Disneyland Hotel. They were performing that night at Disneyland Hotel, and they were performing a pretty big show with I don't know if you remember Billy Barty. He was a, a midget comedian, actor, singer, and in a lot of films, and pretty big name, and I think it was a Staple Singers, a comedian by the name of Burl Williams, who was one of my mentors later on, and Mr. Electric, who was a famous magician. And so, and my parents and myself. And so did my thing
Yeah,
just go.
no worries.
I have rescue dogs. My ex-wife, actually Dory's my ex-wife, but we're still family. We still consider ourselves best friends and family. We created a um, dog rescue here in Las Vegas called Animal Help Rescue. So I was fostering them. Now I'm a foster failure. And so Nemo just knocked over my son.
No sweat. The show
Oh,
must go on.
the
We'll just
show must
keep
go on.
moving. Stay in the
Exactly.
story. Yep.
Absolutely. So back to the story. We're driving down I-15 and we're driving down and Dad leans over to Mom and says, I'm in the back seat trying to sleep. And he said, Georgie'd be great for this show. It's a family show. It's at Disneyland Hotel. It's for a good cause. It's for firefighters and their families fund. And he would be perfect. I'm like, no, I'm done. Oh, you'd be great. So we get into the Disneyland Hotel, into the ballroom where the show was. And Dad talks to the producer and Georgie's part of the act. Well, if you ever saw my parents, you'd know I was not part of their act. They did a physical comedy team, acrobatic dance and slapstick and nothing like I did. But the producer probably knew that and no problem. So the master of ceremonies comes up to my mom and I and he says, Georgie's going to be on the show. And they'd worked with him many times. And so So how would you like me to introduce Georgie? Would you like me to tell him he's your son? And mom looked at me and she looked at the MC and she said, no, let's wait and see how he does first. So no pressure, no pressure.
So wait, you don't get a say in this at all? They're just
Not
going to put
really.
you in front of this large crowd and it's
Yeah,
happening and
because to them, show business was nothing. They didn't realize how nervous I was. So they had me practicing and rehearsing backstage with the yo-yo and everything. So I didn't step on my laughs. So life is a series of firsts, and some aren't life-changing, but the time getting up in front of the audience at sixth grade, that was a first. And it was really life-changing, although I didn't quite know it at the time. And this was another first. So the MC introduces me and I walk out on stage. And this was the first time I'd ever been in front of a spotlight. And if you've ever performed in front of a spotlight, you don't realize that you can't see anything. In fact, uh, another comedian mentor of mine, a good friend of my parents called Don Rice III, actually stepped off the stage because the lights were so bright and the stage was black. And he stepped off right into the orchestra pit and broke his leg. So it's actually kind of dangerous out there because you can't see. I'm walking out and it kind of jolts me, but I, stay pretty good. So I'm trying to make eye contact, as my parents kept telling me, but there's no one, you can't really, you can see a few silhouettes and that's about it. And then when I first told my first joke, the monitors on the stage are facing the singers and the speakers so that they can hear themselves. So there's a little bit of a lag and it kind of threw me off, but I did okay. I guess I did okay because after that, the master of ceremonies came out and said, by the way, that's Tulare Lee's son. Wasn't he great? Da, da, da. So the walked off and just excited, but nervous at the same time. It's
so you painted a great picture of that initial walking on stage and all of the things that no one prepared you for, you weren't expecting. And what about when now you're getting the laughter of such a larger crowd? What
well,
was that like?
that kind of throws you off too, because as I said, I learned to step on my lines, but fortunately they gave me that yo-yo. And so they gave me that yo-yo because a lot of comedians have tools to do their jokes. So if you remember Jack Benny.
Right. But I know, I just mean, right.
uh,
Dad coached you and taught you to
oh yeah,
not step on your laugh.
right.
But what did it feel like to have that many people laugh at your jokes?
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was the greatest feeling. I mean, I don't do drugs. I never have. So I can't give you what that's like. But this was, in my opinion, the greatest drug ever, because your endorphins are going, your adrenaline's going, and it's just a high that you just kind of feel. Even though I was so thankful to get off of there without dying, I was so happy because it's a feeling. It's hard to explain, but it's like you're
Yeah.
on top of the world, and yet there's part of me is like nervous at the same time, so it's one of those things. But now the adrenaline and the endorphins are way farther than the mild nervousness that I may have on stage.
Yeah. So now is that what hooks you to, I want to do this again. I want to
Yes,
experience this again.
absolutely, absolutely. So you learn what you're doing and everything. And like I said, my parents trained me to wait for my laughs. See, that's important, as we said. And a lot of comedians like uh, Rodney Dangerfield would tug on his tie. Jack Finney would do this look. Many of them had cigars. Milton Berle had a cigar. George Burns had a cigar, all to wait to train the audience to laugh. It's a great technique. But I was too young to smoke a cigar or cigarette, so they gave me a yo-yo. And
Wow. So how many more times did you perform that particular routine, or when did you start creating new routines? And then, because that would be Or actually, the next first would actually be, when did you start writing your own
Well,
routines?
that's a great question. First, they got me some stage time, and as a little kid, you could do that, you know, do this little routine. But as I started going, and I started writing right away, you know, because I'm now thinking what would be funny, and so I would slowly start writing. But as I grew older into my late teens, fortunately, I looked like a little kid, you know, so I could get away with that routine for a lot longer than most. But I started writing my own material. We changed the act to a mother and son, but mom was off stage, and I would call home, and so it just kind of evolved. But when I really started to change was when I graduated from college and I moved to Burbank for 2 years to break in a new me, if you will, new jokes, a new personality. See, I could get away with those being cute and a little kid, but as you get older, you have to learn to write the jokes. You have to learn how to deliver the jokes, and so I started doing open mic nights all over the Southern California area, at the Improv, the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, and then the list goes on back then. And so that's how you develop. And as Don Rice III, one of my mentors, he said, "Have you experienced?" They would always ask, "Have you experienced flop sweat?" Because if you want to be a successful comedian, you have to be able to overcome flop sweat. And as I said earlier, that's that when you're dying on stage, and people say, "Wow, you are so great, and you make it look so easy." That's because I worked so hard, dying at the
Yeah.
Improv at 1 o'clock in the morning, where there were only 5 or 6 people there. Two of them were drunks in the audience. The other 3 or 4 were comedians that were waiting to get on after me. So, you really have to pay your dues in order to be good at what you do.
No doubt about that. It's incredible though how it all started for you, that it was a sign up sheet being put on the spot. And I'm sorry, what was your teacher's name again?
Mrs. Gaston.
Mrs. Gaston. Yeah, she definitely pursued you and kind of opened your eyes to the possibilities.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Now, before we start playing the first time lightning round, how
Okay.
can people get in touch with you?
They
And
can go to nextstagecommunications.com if they want coaching on how to present, be a speaker, professional speaker, how to learn to use humor. We have all kinds of programs to groom entrepreneurs, business people, and aspiring speakers to make them better presenters so that they can go out and sell their product or present. And or you can go to originallyspeaking.com, and that's my motivational speaking, humor speaking business.
splendid. All right. And we'll be sure to include those links when we post the interview on YouTube and different places. Okay, so now it is time for the first time lightning round.
Let's
The
go.
way it works is I'm going to give George 10 different first time options. If it's something he has done before, similar to if he was on the 365 First Challenge app, he will say up or swipe up, done it before. If it's something he's never done, not interested, then it's left. And if something that he's never done, would like to do, then we go right and we add it to his list.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Play Tetris.
Left. Never done it. Not interested.
Never done it, not interested. It's a great time killer. Okay. Hire a financial planner.
Up. Have done it.
Have done it. Sing karaoke.
Up. Have done it. Don't need to do it again.
Don't need, all right.
As
Tell
my
us about,
parents said, I have no talent.
well, tell us about your first time singing karaoke.
Oh, it was with a group of friends, and we're at some bar here in Las Vegas, and they forced me to get up there. You see, I have all the confidence in the world to speak, to tell jokes, but I don't have the confidence to. I took singing lessons more for the voice so that I could be a good comedian and speaker. But as far as singing, I could never, I'm tone deaf. So, not my favorite thing to do.
Do you remember what song you sang?
No, I have no.
No. Okay, go bird watching.
I haven't really. Uh, right.
Right, would do that. Okay, do acupuncture.
Up. Have
Up.
done.
Okay, what brought you to to try it?
Well, June of 2001, I was trying to save my mom some money. She had a leak going into her pool, and they said it'd just be $2,000 just to break up the cool decking. And so I said, Mom, I can do that. And so I'm here with the rented a jackhammer for $60. And at the end of the day, these fingers were numb at the tips, right? The next day, I couldn't get out of bed. It was so painful that it's still there. And so I I had a speaking engagement in Anaheim, August 15th or around that time, August 20th. And so um, I couldn't even lift my arms to drive to California. I had to fly. And I was in such pain. I didn't even know if I could do it. But as we said earlier, the show must go on. And so after that, because the steroids, everything else didn't work, but the acupuncture helped.
All right. Hmm. Excellent. Fencing.
Left.
Left.
Never done it. Not interested.
Okay. Ride a tandem bike.
Up. Have done it.
Was that a good experience?
Yeah, it was a kid, so I don't really remember it, but it was.
Okay. Paid a tourist tax or ever been scammed while vacationing?
Left. Never done it. Not interested.
Right. Volunteer for the Red Cross.
Up, in a way. I've raised funds for many charities over a 14-year period, of which the Red Cross was one of them.
Okay, that does count. Hold a snake.
Up, have done it. Left,
Part of-
not interested in doing it again.
Is it part of a show or
No,
fair?
just camping.
Just camping?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, final question is, how have you been making the best of the current situation with the pandemic?
Oh, great question. When this first started, my partner Al Jensen and I were going, how are we going to do this? We have in-class classes in public classes. How are we going to do this? But you know what? It's actually worked out for the best because we've gone digital. We're working on providing classes, online trainings, but we've gone to our speaking classes, all our groups are now on Zoom, and it's actually a godsend because now we are going international. Tomorrow at 10:30, our speakers club meets, and that is at 10 o'clock a.m. And because we have people interested from England, Spain, and around the country. So last week we previewed that, and we did have one person from England and two people from Spain who wanted to participate. So we think that that's going to grow, and it keeps another opportunity. And then our other speakers club, we've had people join us from all over the country. So we are making a positive in this. You have to do the best you can and figure out a way to make it work. And I think we have.
Oh, splendid. So, it opened up some doors you hadn't even thought of going through.
Absolutely. So we're
That's
very excited.
wonderful. All right. Well, George, thank you for spending some time with me this morning, sharing your stories. It's been really awesome to hear about your start.
Thank you, Ann. I had a great time and love to share my stories.